Well, hey there. So it's actually been about 4 months, almost to the day, since I arrived in Sacramento, which has been, I don't want to say the fastest 4 months, or the slowest 4 months, or the weirdest 4 months, or the most intense 4 months. It's been all of those at different points. So hard to kind of categorize a period of time like this where everything changes. And if you're going through something like that yourself, or you do, my word of advice from experience is don't try to create the story while it's still happening. Don't try to understand what all of this means because, at least from my experience, like a month in, I thought, okay, now I have like a grasp of like what this new reality is, and then like 2 weeks later, it was like, oh no, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I thought was happening, and so you just kind of keep going through that experience, and it keeps you humble, and it keeps you open, and it asks you to surrender over and over and over again to however life is unfolding. So anyway, that's really, if I could give a takeaway from my 4 months of doing this, of changing everything, it's to say that you will always know more than you know right now, and that's never going to change. That's just the way that life goes. You're always going to know more than you know right now. So if you don't have the answer right now, just trust that like you will know more in a week. You will know more. You could know more in 20 minutes, So being open to that as well. But what's also been interesting in this process is that it's really been a matter of letting go of who I thought I would be. And a lot of that is tied to living in New York and no longer living in New York. And a lot of people talk about how, and people who've lived in New York, like there's such a visceral experience to it. People say things like, "Oh, like New York just has this energy," and all these different sort of like factors that go with living in New York and who you have to be to live there. And there is some truth to all of that, and I think it's because everything is so incredibly condensed that everything is heightened, and people come there with really intense intentions and expectations, and I think all of that really influences this like bubble of intensity that living in New York can be. And it's neither good nor bad. It's just like an energetic level. And do you want to live at that level? And is that sustainable for you? And for me, it was not. The thing about leaving New York that I think feels so heavy for me is none of that kind of like energy, opportunity, experience, people, none of I guess I want to say like the surface level stuff, or like, one layer below the surface level stuff about New York. Um, it hasn't been any of that. It hasn't been this feeling of, you know, now I don't have, Broadway right there, or now I don't have 10,000 restaurant options, or now I don't have 24-hour subway, or whatever it may be. Like, it's none of that. I think growing up in New Jersey and always having New York nearby, and then going and moving to New York right after college, points in my life that were very aspirational, periods of my life, like when I was younger and I was like first figuring out that I was gay, like knowing that like not that far away was like what seemed to me like this like you just have to get there. You just have to get there and everything's going to be fine. Like as if that were Oz and my whole life would be in Technicolor the moment I, stepped onto West 4th Street, And when I was, young and confused and trying to find my place and trying to find like other people who could explain my experience to me because I didn't understand it, that seemed to be where that existed. And so I always held that in my heart as like I eventually just need to go there to finally like resolve this need and this feeling. And then again, when I graduated college, I actually didn't intend on moving to New York, but I had friends who were moving there, and I had a boyfriend who was there at the time. We broke up 2 weeks after I moved there, so I don't know if I would have actually moved there if it wasn't for him, but I'm glad that we broke up and I didn't stay there with him. But that's a whole other video and a whole other story that we'll talk about another time. Anyway, the point being that I moved to New York out of college with really profound aspirations of what my life there would be. And it's not just, well, now I'm in New York, so now I can become a famous writer, and now I can go to really exclusive clubs, and now I can like meet celebrities, or any of that like bullshit. Like that really wasn't what it was about. It was the sense of like I was 22, and I thought I just want to have, I guess, the life that I was seeing so many other, like, for me, because I looked for my cohorts like that, I saw so many, like, gay men living. They were secure in their social lives, it seemed. They had lots of friends. They always had like a place, a sense of community. That's really what it was, is that I saw people with a sense of community, a sense of home. You know, when I first moved to New York, and I was really just in this like sense of flux. You know, I moved out from my ex's place. I was sleeping on a friend's couch. I didn't have a job yet. I mean, it was like classic moving to New York shit, you know? And I remember like going for walks around Manhattan and like looking up at apartment buildings and seeing lights on in people's windows and thinking, oh, it must be so nice that you have a home, that you have a place, that you are settled and secure here. And I just feel like this urchin trying to find a welcoming doorstep, you know? In that period of really struggling to kind of like find my place, I had developed this fantasy of what I thought the ideal place looked like. And, you know, it was about the apartment I lived in, the neighborhood I was in, what my body looked like, if I was in a relationship, what that looked like. Of course, how much money I was making. I mean, that always factored in. What I was doing for a living, all of these things were almost like tangible ingredients that I knew would complete this recipe that I had, you know, written down and wanted to make. Over the 9 years that I lived in New York, I actually, in a sort of piecemeal way, accomplished basically all of the things that I wanted to accomplish living in New York on that list. You know, I had the job, I made the money, I had the friends, I had the community, I had the home, I had all of like those elements. Like I got to sort of check all of those things off on the list, except none of it looked like what I had pictured when I was 22. And so there was still this sense of unfulfillment, the sense of it not being enough. And that's a good sign to know that, like, this is not ever going to happen. There is never the end of the movie in our lives. There's never the couple kisses, the camera pans away, or whatever happily ever after looks like. That's not reality. And I think I just really wanted that reality. I wasn't accepting that I had gotten that reality. It just looked like reality and not a fantasy. And so when I decided to leave New York, despite the fact that I had really kind of in that time achieved everything I had moved there to achieve, I think as Sacramento transitioned from this experiment that I wasn't committed to into a place that I've really truly started to fall in love with. It has really triggered a mourning and a grieving period for what's not just New York, but the fantasy. I'm finally grieving the fantasy of who I thought I wanted to be. I'm finally letting that go. As things have felt kind of crazy, like emotionally, and I felt lots of stuff coming up and lots of sort of like shifts of my perspective, the more and more that's happening, the more and more I'm realizing that there is this connection between the grief and the shift. You know, that the more I've grieved the past, the more I've shifted into the present. And it's actually kind of an awesome process. It has asked me to surrender more than I've surrendered in a while. And I'm all for it. You know, I love surrender. But this has really asked me to go even deeper and really let go of how I thought life was all going to work out. So if you are watching this video and you currently are going through some major life changes and you're currently trying to navigate things and figure out what feels right and what feels wrong and want to sort it out, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to schedule a session together and just sit down and chat. There's lots of opportunities to do this, even for free. I do free hour-long exploratory calls with clients. I also offer a free week of coaching. That way you can really start to do the work with me if you're ready to start working with a coach and understand what I'm like as a health coach and how you and I can work together to meet your goals and to make you feel more balanced and in alignment with your life. So if you're interested in that, or if you want to check out more, just check out the description below the video. There's a link to my website, to the page where you can sign up to work with me. And really just learn more about who I am and what I do. So, but of course, if you have any questions, you can also just leave a comment and I'll respond. Anyway, thanks so much. Bye.